Borthakur IAS Academy, an endeavor of excellence.
Borthakur IAS Academy.
Hello everyone, welcome to Borthakur's IAS Academy, Northeast's premier institute for UPSC, APSC and NPSC preparations. I'm your friend Atreyi and today I'm here with another segment of Current Affairs 365 dated 2nd of August 2021. This is your one-stop solution for any news and updates which will help you prepare for your civil services examination, and along with that it is also going to be beneficial for any other state government job services. So don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Facebook as well as Instagram for any further updates related to government services. The first news is regarding launch of electronic voucher-based digital payment system named e-Rupee by the Indian government. This particular platform or system is already in use in many countries like Hong Kong, Sweden, US, etc. e-Rupee is a cashless and contactless method for digital payment, which is a QR code that will be delivered to the mobiles of the users, and the users will be able to redeem the voucher without a need of a card, digital payment app or any internet banking access at the service provider. So this will connect the sponsors of the services with the beneficiaries and service providers in a digital mode without any physical interface. This mechanism also ensures that the payment to the service provider is made only after the transaction is completed. It will be different from virtual currency as e-Rupee is still backed by the existing Indian rupee and as an underlying asset, and this specificity of its purpose makes it different from the virtual currency, and also this particular significance puts it closer to the voucher-based payment system. The one-time payment mechanism has been developed by National Payments Corporation in India on its UPI platform, and this is done in collaboration with the Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the National Health Authority. The beneficiaries will be identified using their mobile number and a voucher allocated by a bank to the service provider in the name of a given person, and it would only be delivered to that particular person. Coming to the usage of this digital payment system, first it can be used in the government sector, where it is expected to ensure a leak-proof delivery of welfare services, and it can also be used for delivering services under schemes that are meant for providing drugs and nutritional support under the mother and child welfare schemes. Also drugs and diagnostics under schemes like Ayushman Bharat, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, fertilizer subsidies, etc. Coming to private sector, they can use these digital vouchers as a part of their employee welfare and CSR programs. The government is also working on developing a central bank digital currency, and the launch of e-Rupee could potentially highlight the gaps in digital payment infrastructure. This will be necessary for the success of future digital currency. The second important news is severe acute malnutrition in India. This topic will be tagged under GS paper 2 with issues relating to poverty and hunger, and also government policies and interventions. As per the Women and Child Development Ministry, more than 9.2 lakh children in our country were severely acute malnourished till November 2020. The World Health Organization defines severe acute malnutrition by very low weight for height, or a mid-upper arm circumference less than 115 millimeter, or by the presence of nutritional edema. Children who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition, they are 9 times more likely to die in case of diseases due to their weak immune system. Edema is the abnormal fluid retention in the tissues, which specially results from lack of proteins in states of starvation or malnutrition. An estimation of around 9,27,606 severely acute malnourished cases from 6 months to 6 years were identified across the country till November 2020, and the most suffered states includes Uttar Pradesh, followed by Bihar and Maharashtra. The National Family Health Survey number 4, it suggested that prevalence of severe acute malnutrition among children was at 7.4% for the year 2015-16. But the 5th survey, it suggested that malnutrition increased among the children in 2019-20 in around 22 states and union territories. Around 13 states and union territories out of the 12 surveyed recorded, they found a rise in percentage of children under 5 years who are stunted in comparison to 2015 and 16. Stunting is a phenomena where a child has low height for their age, usually due to malnutrition or repeated infections and poor social stimulation. Severely wasted and underweight is also one of the major cause of severe acute malnutrition. Wasting is low weight for their height among children, reflecting acute undernutrition, and 16 states and union territories, they recorded a rise in the percentage of children under 5 years who are wasted, who are severely suffering from wasting. The COVID-19 pandemic is also pushing millions of people into poverty, reducing their incomes and disproportionately affecting the economically disadvantaged. This pandemic, it prompted lockdowns which disrupted the essential services like supplementary feeding under Anganwadi centers, midday meals, then immunization and also micronutrient supplementation, which further exacerbated malnutrition. There are certain steps which are taken by government in this regard. It includes the Poshan Abhiyan, which is a national nutrition mission in order to ensure malnutrition-free India by 2022. Then we have initiatives like Anemia Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, which was launched in 2018, and the main aim here is to accelerate the annual rate of decline of anemia from 1 to 3 percentage points. Then there are schemes like midday meal scheme. Then we have the Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. It transfers 6,000 rupees directly to the bank accounts of pregnant women for availing better facilities for their delivery. And other initiatives includes the National Food Security Act of 2013 and the Integrated Child Development Services Scheme. Along with that, the Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which it aims at zero hunger. So main focus here is to end all forms of hunger and malnutrition by 2030, making sure that all people, especially children, they have access to sufficient and nutritious food all around the year. COVID-19, it can further exaggerate the situation with shrinking food diversity and low intake combined with many episodes of missing food. So the solutions to both this is home-based care as well as facility-based care. Apart from that, severe acute malnutrition, it has a direct connection with food availability, utilization and awareness. So here the immediate task is to appropriately build linkages with the government systems. Then there is also a need to strengthen the nutrition rehabilitation centers which are meant to treat cases regarding severe acute malnutrition. The next news is about provisional status to Gilgit-Baltistan by Pakistan. As per a report, Pakistani authorities have finalized a law to award provisional provincial status to strategically located region of Gilgit-Baltistan. It is one of the disputed territories of India and is located on the northwestern corner of the Union Territory of Ladakh. This particular area is of strategical importance as it borders Pakistan, Afghanistan as well as China. The region is claimed by India as a part of the erstwhile princely state of Jammu and Kashmir as it existed in 1947 at the accession of India. Maharaja Hari Singh was the last Dogra ruler of Jammu and Kashmir who had signed the instrument of accession with India on 26th of October 1947. It has been under Pakistan's control since 4th of November of 1947 following the invasion of Kashmir by Pakistan Army. Following this invasion, India moved to the United Nations Security Council in order to raise the issue of Pakistan's invasion, and thereby the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution calling for Pakistan to withdraw from all of Jammu and Kashmir, and then India had to reduce its force to the minimum level following a plebiscite that would held to ascertain the people's wish of that particular area. However, no withdrawal was ever carried out, and it remains a point of contention between both the nations. Coming to the current status of this Gilgit-Baltistan area, it is an autonomous region, and after the bill is passed, it will become 5th province of Pakistan, because currently Pakistan has 4 provinces, okay, and presently it had been ruled mostly by executive orders. Until 2009, this particular region was simply called the Northern Areas. It got its present name after the Gilgit-Baltistan Order of 2009, which replaced the Northern Areas Legislative Council with the Legislative Assembly. Now, what are the major reasons for making Gilgit-Baltistan a province? First is that it is the northernmost territory administered by Pakistan and is the only territorial frontier and a land route with China. This region is at a center of the USD 65 billion CPEC infrastructure development plan. CPEC stands for China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and it has made the region a vital place for both the countries. The CPEC, it connects Gwadar Port in Pakistan with Pakistan's Balochistan area with China's Xinjiang province, and this is a flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative. Some experts on India-Pakistan relations, they assert that Pakistan's decision might have come from India's reassertion of its claims after 5th of August 2019, that is reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir. Here, India maintains that government of Pakistan or its judiciary has no locus standi on territories illegally and forcibly occupied by it. Moreover, India has clearly conveyed to Pakistan that entire union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, including areas of Gilgit and Baltistan, they are an integral part of our country by virtue of its fully legal and irrevocable accession. The next news is regarding India assuming the presidency of United Nations Security Council for the month of August 2021. This will be our first presidency during 2021-22 tenure as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, and India began its 2-year tenure as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council in January 2021. India will decide the United Nations body's agenda for the month and will coordinate important meetings on a range of issues. Then it will organize key events in key major areas of maritime security, peacekeeping and counter-terrorism. Security Council will also have several other important meetings including Syria, Iraq, Somalia, Yemen and the Middle East. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be the first Indian Prime Minister to preside over a meeting of the United Nations Security Council. This can be an important question for prelims as well as other important like government services. I'll repeat the point. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be the first Indian Prime Minister to preside over a meeting of the United Nations Security Council. And last time an Indian Prime Minister who was engaged in this effort was the then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao in 1992. This is not regarding a meeting of United Nations Security Council, but it was only about the last Prime Minister who was engaged in any work related to United Nations Security Council. Okay, he attended. He didn't preside over a meeting. He just attended the meeting in 1992. Then coming to the support from other countries, France stated that it is dedicated towards collaborating with India over strategic problems like maritime security, peacekeeping and counter-terrorism. Secondly, Russia also welcomed the country gaining United Nations Security Council's presidency, saying that it is very impressed by India's agenda, which embraces critical global concerns. However, there are some challenges for India at the Security Council. First is China. India is entering the Security Council at a time when Beijing is asserting itself at the global stage quite vigorously than ever. It heads at least 6 United Nations organizations and has challenged the global rules. And China's aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific as well as India-China border has been quite visible all throughout the year 2020. Moreover, China also raised the issue of Kashmir at the Security Council. Second problem is post-COVID world order. As the global economy is in shambles right now with various countries facing recession and health emergencies, it is going to be quite difficult for India to face the situation. Okay. Then third point is balancing United States and Russia and the unstable West Asia. With situation deteriorating between US and Russia and the increasing tensions between Iran and US, it will be a tough situation for India to handle. And India also needs to uphold the rule-based world order with due respect to human rights that is going to ensure the national interest. Now coming to this particular organ of United Nations, as per the United Nations Charter, it established 6 main organs including the Security Council, and Article 23 of the United Nations Charter, it concerns the composition of Security Council. What are the 5 other important organs of United Nations? These are the General Assembly, then the Trusteeship Council, next is Economic and Social Council, then fourth one is the International Court of Justice, and lastly the Secretariat. These are the other 5 important organs of United Nations. The Security Council has been given primary responsibility for maintaining international peace and security, and they may meet whenever peace is threatened. Other organs of the United Nations, they make recommendations to member states. Only the Security Council has the power to make decisions that member states are then obligated to implement under the Charter. And the Council is headquartered at New York. Security Council is composed of 15 members, 5 are permanent and 10 are non-permanent. These 5 permanent members are United Kingdom, United States of America, China, France and Russia, and the 10 non-permanent members, they are elected for 2-year terms by the General Assembly. And with this, we have come to an end of today's session. I hope this video will be helpful. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll see you all again tomorrow with another segment of Current Affairs 365 only on Borthakur's IAS Academy, Northeast's premier institute for UPSC, APSC and NPSC preparations. Till then, take care, keep learning. Bye-bye.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS Academy